can show you some tricks that might help you, or we can go over some of the more advanced settings.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure. So let me just open up SolidProof. Do you guys have a copy of the user guide by any chance?
We do. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So I'm just gonna log in here. So for just load some master info documents. So one thing that you can definitely use is I'm not sure if your samples are like mostly labels or if they're all of like cartons with like die lines and stuff like that.
Yeah, we do labels and die cut cartons.
So one thing, especially if you're doing something versus a PDF versus a scan, so it's important that we try to remove the die line and just trace around that shape. So one thing to do is under like the layers and sections, you might have a die line layer. If you do, you can one of two things. Either you can hide it to prevent it from bringing in software, so then it wouldn't be inspecting that. Because if I would bring it in like this, it would be looking for this die line versus my scan sample. Obviously, your scan sample is like probably the final product, whereas you don't have the die lines which are printed. So one thing you can do is use the shape extraction. So for here, I know my die line is on this layer, so I can just view it. So if I double click, I know it turned off the die line here. But I can go a step further. So I could actually right click on it, and I can see use shape extraction. Actually do that. The layer over here, you see it's kind of, I'll click away, it's grayed out now. So it's using that die line for the shape extraction. So if I click checkbox here, what's going to happen is it's removed the die line, but it's also traced the shape around it. Now when I do an inspection, it's just looking for shape versus my sample.
You don't need to do any cropping on your PDF if you choose that option.
Yeah, so this will speed things up, like versus maybe before you were maybe using the crop mode, maybe you're saying like manual and then just choosing like a specific area. Again, refresh it. We can just right click on it and say use for shape extraction. There are other things in here as well. So when I'm right clicking, I can say add shape library. So this is, I can actually program the software, and I load any PDF file and a layer called die line spelled this way exactly. It'll automatically die line and trace around it, and I don't even have to have any interaction. So I can say right shape library, so I'll get a confirmation message here, and like a little yellow sticky note. So
if you do, is it going to pull up the same exact shape every time? No?
No, it won't pull up the same exact shape. It's going to trace whatever shape the die line is in. So for example, let's say I accept changes. So if I load another file, let's say, I think it's this one. So see this one, I have the same die line here. And you'll have, because I had the option where I said add to the shape library, so it's already there. So, and shape is actually different.
Okay, I see each one.
So it's going to analyze this and just click the checkbox there. You see it tracing around just that die line. So under the shape, it's just looking for the word that I've added to that shape library. Do this with multiple ones. So for example, let's say some other files, maybe it was called cut or cutter, or there's a lot of different ways, like you could call this the line. You could do it for each one. So let's say my next one was maybe called bound, so I could say right click, I can say add to shape library, and then that background layer would be added as well. and to remove something. So I could just right click it and I can just say remove from shape library. And for this die line as well, I can say remove from shape library. So this will actually do it for all users. So if you had other users, they were using the applicant, it would be set for them as well.
I'm looking at this is Herb. I'm looking at our PDFs to see if ours are layered like that.
Okay.
You can't tell until you bring them in. They are.
Oh, they are?
Yeah. The ones I tested, different, they're set up differently, but most of them have like a guideline layer that you can turn off once you import it in as your master.
We could also do, so we do have another tool that'll do the same thing. So in the event that you don't have a layer separation with that die line, we have an option here, die line. So we can actually use this. I can click on the die line and it'll actually do the same thing. The kind of drawback to this is the line would have to be a separate color from everything else, because otherwise it wouldn't know where to pick. So the way how to use this tool here is I would zoom into the die line. So this one is use this icon here, the zoom to selection. I can click into a small area. So it's zoom to that area. So I see the die line here, and I'm just going to use that tool. Click. So now zoom back out. Again, die line has disappeared here temporarily. And except changes, the same thing should happen. So it's just around the die line, and it's actually the die line at the exact same time. So you try that way as well if you have the die line layer or separation.
Okay.
All right, just load here also. Because I removed the die line here, so I should do the that's going to flag a bunch of differences. So I'm just going to move it temporarily. So I'm just going to double click to hide that layer. So what's cool in the PDF viewer as well, so I can hide stuff by default. So for example, say I always wanted this title box. So this title box information, I'm not inspecting it. It's always there. I don't display it if I don't want to. Also right click it and I can just say hide by default. So your file with that exact same name, the layer, where it's called box like this, it would actually be hidden as well.
Okay.
Others to show you. So once I click on inspect to run inspection, it'll analyze both files. Also, to determine which setup I'm on, I can just look at the top title bar here. So it's showing me I'm on the digital setup. So by default, the solid proof, it comes with 4 setups. If folder and I go to setups, I can choose one of the 4. So these are the predefined ones. So you can edit the setups within here, but it's also a quick way to edit once it's like on the fly. So for example, if I click on manage, so I double click on them. So let's say digital, and then I can the parameters. So we can get to the screen once we're in an inspection. So cancel and close this. So let's say I'm going to run an inspection on these files here, and that's the parameters. So I can control my keyboard and press S, so control S for the settings, and I get the same parameter. So now I actually adjust something, click accept, and it'll rerun the same inspection with the new settings. Okay, it's probably help you when you're doing the when you're testing to see like, okay, what, yeah, I catch this, but I want to catch this. So it's a way to say like, hey, maybe how does my inspection look if I lower the sensitivity? So okay, let me lower it to 90. I can click accept, and it'll read inspection right away. You can click Control S again, and so it saves those settings temporarily. Let's say I want to lower it even more. I can click on accept. And it's going to show me the differences. So if I want to save it, I can click on back and save those settings automatically. I believe my setup is saved here.
So send me the slide that we should use for setting up how sensitive we want it.
I'll go through all the settings with you just so you have like a little better understanding of what each one does. So you hit Control S. So the inspection is done in two modes. There's a high contrast inspection and low contrast inspection. So high contrast and low contrast, it's just this first box here where the difference is. The second two, so the booklet and where the sort starts, that's constant between both setups. Okay, so there's the first is the high contrast inspection. So what it's looking at is different in between both, but it's more as to like differences and stuff that's contrast. So what does that mean? It's easy to see. So like black text on a white background, or blue text on a white background. And the low contrast inspection is for stuff that's harder to see. So this is how it's been in the background. You shape extraction in order to determine where the differences are. So something where you might have dark text on a dark background, or like a dark logo on a dark background, something along those lines.
Why is there, you can select the high contrast inspection or low contrast inspection and the box that you can check? What's the difference there?
The box just means that it's enabled. So basically, if I only wanted to do a high contrast inspection, I can come here and uncheck it. So it means when an inspection, it's not looking for low contrast differences. So for like a dark text in a dark background, so it's not going to look for those types of differences. So a quick way to work through it, so we can quickly determine where all the differences are coming from. So for example, I'm going to turn off low contrast. I'm on accept. It's going to another inspection, and now see what the results are. So it looks like my number of differences. Like I had 20 before, and it's actually without the low contrast. It's the number of differences by 2. So is that something I care about? It might be. It depends like what I'm looking for. I'll turn it back on. Maybe, let's say you're doing inspection, you have 50 differences. So saying like, okay, maybe the sensitivity for the high contrast might be too high or too low. It might be the contrast might be too high or too low. You can automatically determine which one is picking up the difference. So we just check one, run the inspection, and just to see. And you know where it's picking up difference, and then if we need to, we can how sensitive we want the software to be.
What happens if uncheck both?
If uncheck both, we can find it probably shouldn't find any differences. You'll get something like this. So its difference is found. It's flashing between the master and the sample. You can usually see there's no differences, but this is telling me there are none. Okay, just rename them both. So what you could do is, let's say, let me go back here. So under File menu and the setups, original ones, I can always restore to default. So I've modified the digital one. I don't remember what sensitivity it was, or maybe I changed some other stuff. I restore defaults and restore all of them back to its original state. Should do is maybe make a copy of them. So, for example, let's say I want to work with the one. I can say copy, say scans, create that new within here as well. So you can use this to modify. And then first I select the setup here, so scans, and then I can just re-verify on the title bar that I'm under the new scan setup. Inspect, and the differences. Okay, so also in the setups here, this one is the minimum difference diameter. So this is all these settings. So these settings here are all in pixels. The first one is minimum difference diameter, which means how small can the difference be before it's flagged difference. So basically anything less than a 2-pixel difference, so let's say 1/2 or 1 pixel, will not get flagged as a difference. Anything over 2 pixels will get flagged as a difference. Let's say we're looking for large characters which are missing. So and with 2 pixels, maybe it's picking up too many. I'd say try it with maybe 5. So I can say pixels. So anything less than 5 would not get flagged as a difference. Greater than 5 pixels will get flagged as a difference. And then we have the maximum difference diameter. So this is how large can the difference be before ignored. So anything over 10,000 pixels, which is very large, will get ignored as a difference. The maximum difference count, so the software will flag a maximum of 5,000 differences. You never see this when you run an inspection. And we have maximum difference shifts. So this can help you with the talking about. So if it's flagging like small registration issues, so it's if you're just slightly from left to right or up and down, you can increase the tolerance. So it's allowing 40 pixels. So if it moves 40 pixels in any which way, not flagged as a difference. If anything greater than 40, then it is. So if it's flagging your some registration, you can try to change this to something a little higher. The difference grouping. So the grouping. So how many differences in a radius before it gets grouped into one difference? So if you have a lot of small differences being separately, you can increase this number to just show larger boxes.
I understand difference grouping.
Instead of saying that here's grouping.
I see.
So instead of having a bunch of little itty tiny pins, set up with something that's grouped and that's called one defect.
Okay.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So right now at 50, so maybe you see two are being grouped separately, and maybe these two. So if I increase it, let's say 100, we'll see if it groups it together as a difference. Yeah, so see now this does two separate ones, as well as this one. Now they're being grouped as to one difference. So it's just grouping multiple differences into one.
Defining an area in pixels or number of differences.
Yeah, exactly. Over we also have the sensitivity. So this is how sensitive the software is. So looking for very slight color differences, you need to increase this. If it's picking up maybe too much information, maybe it's picking up very slight things, you can decrease the sensitivity. Yeah.
Back to Stephanie's question with the difference grouping.
Mm-hmm.
When you 25, that's 25 and how big an area?
25 pixels. So basically,
all differences within 25 pixels will be grouped together.
Within a radius of 25 pixels. So to 100, so anything within 100 radius would be grouped together as one difference. We also have tools within the inspection. So let's say, for example, manually group something or manually exclude something like inner range. So you're doing an inspection, it's catching the edge of the carton or something, and you're like, okay, well, I know that's a difference, like that's new to me. So I can exclude them all from the report. So is the exclude difference here. Use the grouping difference, so we can group them together if we want. So let's say, for example, group difference, I click and drag. So these two differences together as one. If I exclude a range, I could do the same thing. So use the X button here, exclude difference. Say click, so I've dragged these three here. So these here have automatically been excluded, and it won't show up on the report. On the differences list, so we can see three of them are grayed out, and those will not show up in the report there as well. The one is add a difference, so I can manually insert difference as well. So let's say, for example, I have this number. So because it's the same on the master and the sample, the master is saying it's okay. But let's say, for example, I know that this product, this number should be different. So I can just add difference by clicking this, clicking the area, and it's been added. And then I can add comment or level. I can also double click on the difference to add a counter. Well, okay, so the setup window. Looked at the sensitivity, and the last two options here for the high contrast inspection. So refine and have smoothing. We have a drop down. So basically what refine does is helpful for if you have things with creases. So for example, if your carton was pre-fold already and then you have to take it apart and then maybe lay it flat on a scanner to get a scan, or maybe scanning in like large inserts with like just text and it was like folded and you had to kind of flatten it out to scan it as well. So it helps with that inspection. So what that does, the background inspection is done in smaller sections. So very high being the smaller even the smallest sections, and then very low and off to be large sections. So default we have it on medium, so it's doing it in large or neither small set in the background. For example, if you were, let's say, doing a carton inspection like we are here, let's say you have like creases and folds, and Roof is picking up that information, so it's picking up where the crease is. It's saying like there's a difference there, and you don't care to see it. You want to try to maybe ignore that. And if the sensitivity lowering it is not really helping, you can change the refine. So change it to slightly higher, so to high or very high, and just see what the results are. So it'll do the inspection in smaller, so going higher. So let's say very high, it'll do it in really small sections, and it'll try to ignore the creases and the folds. The smoothing option on this side. So what it does is it smooths out. It's a smoothing filter that's applied over the PDF to better match the scan for the noise. Basically smoothing, it's smoothing both of them, and in order to get a better. So because if your is too sharp versus your scan, which is maybe a little bit softer on the text, it's going to get a lot of differences. So this is where we apply this. If too much effect on the overall amount of differences it finds, but it is something that does. Over to the low contrast. So basically that first section for the settings are the exact same. The difference diamond, like this, is obviously somewhat different than the contrast, as you can see, to values that can be applied. Contrast, see that the grouping is fairly low, and even sensitivity by default it's 7 inches, a little bit lower. Okay, so the option here is independent from the high contrast, low contrast inspection. It's low bit mode, so this basically allows Solid Proof to do a multi-page inspection. So you guys are doing that where you have like a 4 pages, or
yeah, we're not.
Okay.
Always 1-to-1.
Okay.
So we may have repeats in the label, but it's just one sheet.
Yeah, the repeats is independent of this. The book is just for multi-page inspections.
Right.
Okay, so these here are also independent from the high contrast, low contrast. The first is auto distort. So by default, it's on, especially for scanned images. Basically, what it's doing is it'll allow to better match the scans by allowing it to slightly increase or decrease in size. So leave that, it's on by default as well. Next here are for the repeat finding. So this is similar, the images should be to each other. The next is repeat variance. So how much it can vary between the two images. Rule of thumb is, let's say I was doing an inspection and maybe it wasn't picking up all the repeats on sample side. I can adjust these slides. So what I would do is I would decrease the image similarity. So I would say, okay, so maybe images 35 is meaning it should be that much closer. So I want to decrease how similar they could be, and I want to increase how the image may vary. Always try to slide both of them the opposite way. So just do it by like maybe 5 or 10%. just to see what the results are. You can do this on the fly, just like the high contrast, low contrast. So just adjusting it, clicking on inspect, it'll run the inspection, and it'll show like whether it found all the repeats or maybe you're missing one or two, and then again maybe just change the slightly to better find them. Okay, then match thresholding. So this is basically an advanced repeat finding. So we have this on by default, so it'll better determine where the repeats are and map them up better. Okay, last option, desired DPI. So by default, we scan and inspect at 300 DPI, but we can just do higher. So if you want to change it to 400 or 600 DPI, you can do this here. So the time I load, it would automatically be loaded in the DPI that I select. Obviously, I have to scan at the same DPI as well. Just a word of caution. So if I were to change the desired DPI, it does affect my high contrast and low contrast. So obviously the pixels that I'm finding here, it'll increase because we're increasing the amount of pixels. I think most customers, they just leave it at 300. If you're doing like a micro text that you're looking for differences in, then we would only increase the DPI for that. Okay, so, do you have any questions or anything you want me to cover?
Template, and that be kind of universal for our type of work and save it.
I didn't quite hear that.
I was asking if we can build kind of an inspection profile unique to our needs, and from my understanding, we can. You know, we start, because I test already, I brought up the scan profile, and this was a couple weeks ago. I renamed it, changed some settings, and saved it, and it added it to the list. So we can create our own profile, basically, or set up parameters.
Exactly, and that's what you did. So, and then you can create multiple ones for maybe different scenarios. So, like you had one for maybe a certain type of product. So maybe you had like one for labels, and maybe another one for cartons. Maybe one for maybe labels with like a dark background. So maybe that's where you would change the low contrast. Maybe you'll set it a little higher to make sure it's finding the differences within like the dark text and dark background. And maybe you have another one for maybe just for labels. So you have like a regular like white label with like black text and something with like more contrast. So in that scenario, we would just maybe lower the sensitivity a little for the high contrast and for the low contrast, and then keep the high contrast on or a little higher. You can create setups for that. Editor would use they would simply, basically I would know like, okay, this is my high class carton set, so I would click over, go to setups, make sure I'm on that correct one, and then run action.
Oh, question. If we build a profile, are we able to lock it so that users cannot change it?
Good question. It depends if you have a login component. When you open up Solid Proof, does it require a username and password, or does it just go in?
It does not require a username and password.
Okay, you're missing that functionality. So then you would not be able to lock it, unfortunately. That is a feature we could add. So if you are interested in it, I can do your sales representative and see if something that we can add for you. In this case, then basically we have a registration portion. So basically, I could go in, and then when I create another user, I can give them access rights. So regular users would not be able to change any settings like in that setup parameters that we saw, and they'll be able to run an inspection.
Yeah, see, we're thinking we'll probably want to do that, but we'll good idea since they know where we want our settings to be.
Sure.
Understand it helps me understand what the settings mean and how we can adjust them to try to hone in on the kind of things we want to detect. I know that's my big thing because I thought, yeah, you could run, 1,000 different test parameters, and I didn't want to just, start without guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so curious about why did you get the settings set up, blacking them out where people can't go in, like we have rewind, we have so far that we can adjust those settings, they can't go any lower once they get to some point, that's it.
Right, yeah, I'm thinking that's how it'll be.
It should be, I mean, I think you need to have those parameters set up, you can't, like in her, well, if I don't want to catch many defects, I want any more.
Right, and we're doing all different options, yeah. Thanks so much for your time, Jonathan.
Okay.
Very appreciated.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
You too, thank you.
Thank you.